I think I was 5 years old. Anybody can remember back when you were 5 years old? Yeah? All right. So when I was 5 years old, I can remember my dad, I believe he was working for Mercury Freight. I could be wrong, but I think that's where he was working at, there in the Houston area. I was around kindergarten, so 5, 6 years old, which would put him around 28, 29 years old. And he got laid off. He got laid off from his job. He didn't know what he was going to do. We needed money. And a buddy of his, I don't know who the buddy was, came up and said, "Hey, Ken, I got us a job." "Well, what is it?" "We got to change out a light and some cable at the top of an antenna." I think it was 600, 300. What was it, Dad? That's what I thought. 640 feet in the air. My dad at 28 or 29 years old with his cowboy boots on, which never made sense to me. I think it was his cowboy boots. He went out there with this other guy. They climbed up to the top. And the closer they got to the top, the smaller the ground got. And he made the comment that while he was up there working, he wasn't looking down. The wind was blowing all over the place. The guy he was working with was a little bit higher than him and chewing Red Man all day and spitting. And my dad never got hit once because the wind was blowing so strong. Now, that may not seem like much to you. But to me, that's another example of my father doing whatever he needed to do to take care of our family. And while he was doing that on whatever day of the week it was, when he got back home, we were still involved in Bible study. We were still involved in going to school and going to other places. But my dad has always been there for me. Always. When I moved to California, he went to California. I went with him, actually. When I came back to Texas, he and my mom came back to Texas. When I needed help in seminary, he was there. When I was deer hunting, when I was 15 years old, on December the 9th, I shot my first ever deer. We off in the woods, and I was so excited about that. And so I shot the deer on my third attempt with the 30-30. The third shot finally hit him. I took off running through the woods. "Hey, Dad, come skin my deer." He had just got into his stand with his bow, and the deer was starting to come in when I came and scared everything off. Did he complain about it? No. Did he come and help me? Yes. We had to go back to the car to get some things. We came out to get the deer. We came back to the car, and he realized I had locked the keys in the car in the middle of the woods. Did he get mad at me? If he did, he never showed it, okay? But here's my point. We all have memories of our fathers, different kinds of memories. Some of us were raised by faithful fathers. Some of us are raised by fathers who were still healing from their own wounds. Because that's life, right? You can be faithful and still be healing from wounds. Some of us have raised by fathers and our fathers who are encouraged by the fruit we see in our kids, the life that they're living, the examples they're setting for others, the accomplishments they're making. And then some of us as fathers are grieving over a child who's wandered away or something else in our life where we're broken. So I understand that today is producing a lot of different emotions for a lot of different people for different reasons. You know, in our culture, I've heard this a lot in my life, maybe you have too. This is what culture says is important. Provide financially for your family. Make sure they have what they need financially. Protect them. Coach your children towards success, whatever that means. Success in sports, success in school, success in education. Whatever it is, make sure your kids are success. And the one I hear a lot, make sure they have more than I did growing up. I want them to have more than me, to have greater opportunities than me. And then teach them to become responsible adults. Seems okay, doesn't it? Those are some pretty good things. Who's ever been to the beach? All right, we don't live that far from Gulf Shores and Orange Beach and all that different places, or Holly Beach and those kind of things. So going to the beach around here is a pretty common thing, right? And so you go to the beach, mom sits down, so you get your chair out, little sister's because she can't swim yet. She's got the sand bucket there. Dad is about to throw the frisbee, and little brother's about to go out and do the boogie board. Who's boogie boarded before? Yeah, a few of you have. All right, so while dad and brother are playing, little sister starts working her way out in the water. But do you see what's going on back in the back? Some of you do, some of you don't. There's a rip current. Just last week when our ladies were leaving Grand Isle, there was a person that People got caught up in a rip current there at Grand Isle, and a taxi driver ran out and saved them. Because a current can sweep you away really fast, right? I know when I used to go to Huntington Beach growing up in high school, my senior year of high school, I'd go out in front of this lifeguard station with my boogie board, and when I finally got through and came back, I was about 10 lifeguard stations down because the current's constantly pushing you north in California, okay? But anyway, so the shoreline hasn't moved. Little boy is getting sucked out in the current. But the shoreline didn't move. The family's still in the same spot. They didn't move. The current's been carrying you. It's what culture does, right? We've been talking about 7 churches in Revelation, chapter 2 and 3, and how each of them were a representative of who God is and his kingdom in the cities where they're representing him. And each one of them had different strengths and different weaknesses. And last week we talked about the church in Philadelphia. And God tells them, look, you've not denied my name. I'm going to protect you when the hard times come. But culture drift is all around us. And in the Roman culture, as we looked at, you had the idea of imperial cult worship and other things. But our children are being formed every day, dads, moms. Truth is, we're all being formed every day. Our phones are forming us. These little computers that we look at every day, I've seen people look at them and get happy, look at them and get mad. Depends on what you look at and what the algorithm is, right? But they're forming us, forming our thoughts, forming our attentions, forming our beliefs. Our friends are forming them. They go to school, they go to work, we go to school, work. We're being formed by our friends, are we not? Social media is forming them, and it's forming us. But fathers, government is forming us. The church is forming us. Family. And dad. You're forming your children too. You see the dad sitting there throwing frisbee with his son. Mom's reading her book. People go out on the beach all the time, know how to swim. Some great swimmers who get caught in the rip current. Sometimes you know what to look for, sometimes you don't, but when you find yourself in it, you feel it start tugging, and before long, you're out. And so the person that's caught in it most of the time tries to swim against it to get back, and all that does is tire them out more. They get sucked out farther and farther away. But the beach never moved. So all of a sudden, everybody's like, oh, we got to do something. You can imagine the fear that goes through a mom or a dad's heart when their child is being swept away. But not just in the ocean. What about decisions they make in life? Decisions that you see sweeping them away from the foundation that brings peace and hope. This morning I'm inviting you for the next couple of weeks, actually. We're going to be looking at the playbook that God's given us. And here's what I mean by that. We looked at Revelation last week. And God talks about how he's going to protect his people. He's going to keep them, is actually what the word says, during a time of struggle, time of trial. And that's been taken and gone a lot of places with the idea of rapture and the end times, and a lot of people are talking about that. And we're opening the door to that today, but please hear me, it's just a crack in the study moving forward of what we're going to be looking at, digging in deeper on Sundays and in Wednesdays about God's keeping us during hard times. So God has given you and me as fathers, as parents, as grandparents, as children of his, as disciples of his, to teach the generation to do what? The next generation to do what? To know who God is. Seems like a no-brainer. But there are people who don't know who Jesus is. They don't know who the God of creation is. Not just in other parts of the world, but in this one right here. To know what God has done. Well, you can find the most Christian, well, God died for me. What else did he do? But also to help them understand that they belong to him, okay? And so in Hebrews, the Hebrew writer says we must pay the most careful attention, therefore, to what we've heard, so we don't drift away. Now, if you'll remember in Revelation chapter 1, verse 19 and following, God says, these are my messengers. The lampstands are the church, the stars are the angels or the messengers, and to each of the churches in Revelation chapter 2 and chapter 3, he gives a message to the church through his angel, through his messenger. And he says, hear. Who has ears, let him hear, right? If you have an ear, hear what the Spirit says to the churches. But here in Hebrews, he's saying, look, pay careful attention. Why? Because it's easy to get distracted. Our minds are on other things. I'll be honest with you. It's hard to pay attention in here, is it not? For 6 years, when Jennifer and I lived in Houston and we served with the Mackay Ford, I worked at Mackay Ford and we served with the West Houston Church of Christ, and we had a house church meeting in our home. I went to church on Sunday mornings and I sat there and I had the hardest time concentrating on what the preacher had to say. So I get where you're at. My mind was going a lot of different places, and sometimes what he had to say made sense to me. Sometimes it didn't. Sometimes it applied to what I was going through. Sometimes it didn't. But all the time, he was experiencing and sharing the truth of God's Word. So it's not just about what we do in here on Sunday mornings, okay? I want to be aware of that, but I want to understand that it's hard to pay attention sometimes. But the reason is we don't drift away. Because God doesn't move. The truth doesn't move. The foundation that is Jesus Christ does not move. But when we lose our attention and we get distracted, we find ourselves like Samson in bed with Delilah, having our strength removed and found ourselves captive. For since the message spoken through the angels was binding, and every violation of disobedience received in its just punishment, how shall we escape if we ignore so great a salvation? This salvation, which was first announced by the Lord, was confirmed to us by those who heard him. So the playbook, as we're looking at, as we're opening it up, I played sports. Some of y'all played sports. You get a playbook. You go to work, you get an SOP book, what the standard operating procedures are around here. My son-in-law helps create those things for his company. So here's the idea, okay? I got to looking and I got to studying, and I realized something. What God is telling the 7 churches of Asia is exactly what he tells his people in Deuteronomy. He's talking to a people in Revelation that are living in cities, living in a culture, living in just like us, surrounded by people who don't love God, who do love God, who are being distracted, who are undistracted, who are trying to glorify him, who are trying to put him down. They're in a place where they're outnumbered. And God is saying, look, I got a message for you. This is what you're doing wrong. This is what you're doing right. Let me help you get where you need to be. And then he says there's going to be some struggles coming, and I'm going to keep you. Well, in the book of Deuteronomy, we have 3 generations in one covenant of Christ. In Deuteronomy, he's talking to a people who are about to go into a land where the people worship other gods, a land where they don't love God, a land where it's as far away from Yahweh as you could be. He's going to give it to them. He's rescued them out of the hand of slavery, out of bondage, out of Egypt. He's bringing them in. Y'all know that. In Judges, they are now inhabiting the land. They got it. They are living in Philadelphia. They're living in Sardis. They're living in Thyatira. They're living in New Iberia. And they're worshiping God. They're serving God in the community and being who God called them to be. They're the lampstand that they're supposed to be. But somewhere along the way, they got distracted. The church in Ephesus lost its first love. The other churches began to compromise just as well. In Philadelphia, it's holding firm. Not denying who Christ is in the middle of a culture that says to deny Christ. In a culture that says put the hat on. Put the jersey on. In a culture that says bow down to this idol when you hear the noise. Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego chose not to. But in Judges chapter 2, verses 9 and 11, we're going to look at it in a minute, you have a generation whose fathers didn't tell the stories. And so then you get to Judges chapter 2, 10 and 11, and you have an entire generation that does not know who God is. And that's what God, Jesus the Christ, is warning against to the 7 churches in Revelation as well. And to us today. There is always the current that will pull us away and distract us from what is most important and essential. And we are just a generation away from having children and grandchildren who do not know who the Messiah is. So in Deuteronomy, he talks about preparing the land, a land filled with rival gods, rival values, and rival definitions about what life is and what life isn't. And so he says this in Deuteronomy chapter 1. I'm going to break down some points with you. We started a little late today. It's 10 till. I hope to have you out of here by 11:15 or 11:15. If I don't, it's Walter's birthday. This is for him. So these are the commands, Deuteronomy chapter 1, 6. These are the commands, decrees, and laws of the Lord your God directed me to teach you to observe in the land that you are crossing the Jordan to possess. So in Revelation, we have angels who are carrying out a message, messengers. And in Deuteronomy, Moses is the messenger speaking and sharing on God's behalf. You with me? So he says, these are the commands I'm supposed to teach you, and you're supposed to observe. Before I go any farther, I went to Walmart this morning. Jennifer said, hey, I need some limes for lunch. And so I went. And when I got back home, she said, where have you been? I'm at Walmart. I'm the only person there, right? I wasn't using my card. I was paying with cash. I get there. I get my 10 limes, $2.50. I get a bottle of kombucha. It was $2 and some change. So it ended up being $5.19. I make the payment with my $20 bill. It gives me 2 dimes and no cash. I'm like, okay, what's going on here? Somebody comes over and says, we'll have to open it. They're running around. They don't know what to do. The lady's walking by pushing the baggie to get stuff for everybody, when you call in an order for food. She's pushing, hey, can you help? Jen's her name. And they were all great. Let me be the first here. They were great helping me. All right? I want you to understand that. But she's trying to help. They can't figure out what to do because the manager who's over all of it is not there yet. And so, I'm sitting here waiting on $14 is what I'm waiting on. And so they say, well, you know what? We're going to have to go to the gas station to get your money, then come back over here. So I get in my car. I drive to the gas station. The lady goes halfway across the parking lot. You got to come back. So I come back. I go inside, and I'm waiting. I don't know where she's at. Some time goes by. I'm like, any idea? We're waiting on so-and-so. I'm not going to say her name to get here. I'm like, oh, okay. Okay. I'm looking. I'm getting frustrated, but I'm not getting angry. A lot of people get angry over stuff like that, right? And I could sense my dad's teaching of me in my lifetime of God and the Spirit saying, it's not their fault. It's a machine. So some time goes by, and eventually they get the manager on the phone, and they go behind the customer service thing, and they're pushing buttons and trying to find stuff, and they get this bag, and they find a little, whatever you call it, a card, put it up there, and they finally get my money. And she said something to me that was so powerful. First off, she apologized. Said, it's not your fault. Things happen. She goes, we've never been trained for this. And then it occurs to me, a lot of us in the kingdom haven't been trained. We've been given information. We've been told facts. We've seen some people live examples, but a lot of us haven't had that training. like we do for our jobs and in our sports. When it comes to following God, it's just kind of like we hope to get it by osmosis. And so he's telling them, I need to teach you something because where you're going is life and death. And it matters. So parents, grandparents, everybody in here, what Moses is telling us through Moses is telling us today is something that is life-changing, life-altering, and is a matter between life and death, eternity with him or separated from him. It matters. So that you and your children and their children after them may fear the Lord, the God, as long as you live by, keeping all his decrees and commands that I give you, and so that you may enjoy long life. So your children, your grandchildren, 3 generations. Judges chapter 2, 10 and 11, the 3rd generation didn't make it. The first one got to go in, their parents didn't, remember? Because their parents didn't obey. And then they got to go. The 2nd generation heard the stories. The 3rd generation didn't know who God was. Hear, Israel. Be careful to obey, so that, why do we need to obey? So that it may go well with you and that you may increase greatly in the land flowing with milk and honey, just as the Lord, the God of your ancestors, promised you. If we do it God's way, there's still a battle they got to fight. In Revelation, there's still struggles going to come. In our lives, there's still struggles going to come, but God has promised us to bring us through it. Hear, O Israel, the Lord our God, the Lord is one. Love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, with all your strength. I got a question for you. Do you? And what does that even look like? It looks like a father who's going to defend his baby with his life. A mother who's going to defend her baby with their life. Or does it look like a mom and dad who are too busy having a beer, reading a book, talking to their friends while their other child's being swept away to the ocean? Make sense? I know it does. The danger? Same thing they dealt with in Revelation, trying to worship God and all the other things that society and culture says are worth worshiping and pursuing. And when we do that, we are no longer committed and have our allegiance to God. And that's the warning in Revelation, time and time again. No different, same game plan. Don't value and worship the gods, the values, or practice the surrounding culture. Do we not do the same thing in our culture today? It's consistent. These commandments, verse 6, these commandments that I give you today are to be on your hearts. What are you thinking about? Psalm 1 says, meditate on God's word day and night. So we can be like a tree planted by the water. It produces fruit in season. But were you thinking about God's way of doing things or something else? And the something else inevitably will take us out to sea. Our children, our friends, our spouses, they see Jesus' effect on us, do they not, in our decisions that we make? They see it in our relationships, in how we talk, how tightly we squeeze money because we're worried or because we're greedy, or how much effort we put towards it. God says you can't love both God, money, and mammon, God and mammon. They see how we forgive or don't forgive. They see our sexuality, not just between a husband and a wife, but our identity as a man and a woman. They see how we treat others. They see our repentance, whether we really change or we keep doing what we've always done. And they see our priorities. And so Jesus is either having an effect on that or he's not in the culture that we live in. And God is telling Israel, Jesus is telling Philadelphia, and God is telling us that who we're committed to, who has our allegiance, and what we focus on matters. Impress them on your children. Talk about them when you sit at home, when you walk along the road, when you lie down, and when you get up. Impressed is this idea of doing it over and over and over again, directly. How many times have I told you? Right? But not like that. I've seen dads who have this idea that my kid's going to be the next superstar. So before they can even get out of the bed, they've given them a ball. And they're throwing that ball and rolling that ball. Then they get out in the yard and they toss that ball. And all that's okay. And they keep throwing, and they start adding other drills. And they make sure they're at practices on time, and they make sure that they have all the equipment that they need. And they get them to and from the games, and they ask them questions about, hey, how was practice today? What'd y'all do today in practice? How'd you do in the game? The idea of taking a blade, a knife, you take a knife and you put it on a whetstone just one time, it's not going to get very sharp, is it? You got to go back and forth, back and forth. Why? Because the more you run it across that, the sharper it's going to get. So the idea is it's repeated, intentional contact, impressing on our children who God is and what it means to be His child and follow Him. When you sit at home, around the table, you can do, if you didn't do this before, you can do it now. When you sit around the table with your children, around the living room coffee table, where did you see something good today? Hey, what was difficult today? What made you angry today? What made you afraid? What were you afraid of today? Where do you think God was present? Where do you need help carrying? Oh, you need a different kind of bat? I'll get you a bat. You need more time in the batting cage? I'm going to get you in the batting cage. Oh, you need a different size uniform? I'm going to get you that. Okay with those conversations. But God is saying when that's what we focus on, we drift. We got to get back to talking about what God's doing. So taking these conversations and applying it back to God in our own life and how God's helped us. And when we do that, we're sitting at home, we're instilling something repetitive over and over again. When you walk along the road, use what your children are already seeing. For us, it might be walking down the road, driving in a car, going to the park. But the idea is, what is the internet? What is Wall Street trying to tell us is important and will make you happy? Brand new car, pair of shoes, the right clothes, right job, right boyfriend, right girlfriend, right pant size. What does that song you're listening to teach about love? She rocked me all night long. Come on, baby, lock the door and turn the lights down low. I'm not saying music's wrong, but what an opportunity to say, hey, what is that song? What is WAP teaching? And some of you know what I'm saying when I say WAP. And the laugh in the back row lets me know for sure she knows what I'm talking about. Our culture, before that got on live music awards. What does that teach to somebody about love? What does that video you're watching encourage you to become? These are conversations of how we begin to interact with our children. What is the media asking us to fear? Black people, white people, Hispanic people, rich people, Iranian people, Islamic people, people different than us. Why? Because if we can get you to fear people, then we can control you. Because God says there's neither Greek nor slave or free, barbarian, Scythian. We are all one in Christ Jesus. And so we can talk about what that looks like. Does God create the Islamic man in His image? Absolutely. Is the Islamic man worshiping contrary to what God would call us to be? Absolutely. But rather than just getting mad and putting them down and say, they don't be in this country, maybe start living and following what God calls us to do, to where Christianity begins to be something seen as alive and active and growing versus, well, they ain't doing what I'm supposed to be doing. And when we lean into it, Israel conquers. Why? Because they're calling and being who God called them to be. They're sharing the stories of what God has done when they're walking along the road. In other words, how would someone living under the reign of Jesus respond? Is that not what Revelation 2 and 3 have been about? If we're going to be who God called us to be, what does it look like to have your allegiance to Him first and foremost, and not Caesar, not culture, not all the other things? I've mentioned baseball, I've mentioned dancing, I'm missing music, and I'm not saying those are wrong because they're not in their proper place. When you lie down. In other words, go into their world. Take some time before they go to sleep at night and ask them, what are you carrying? What are you burdened? And I can hear people saying, well, my kid ain't going to say nothing. Well, my kids did. Why? Because Jennifer started it when they were babies. And then it got to a point where we didn't do it as much, okay? But that doesn't mean we don't start. Some of the people that are part of this church family, their stories and their lives have been transformed in immeasurable ways. And it's obvious to everybody around that God is working through their lives. And I'm going to pick on my sister Jessica just for a minute, because Jessica's daughters have gone to her and said, Mom, you're different. Guess what? Now she gets to speak and enter into their world, invitation given, about the God who she submits to and whose reign she aligns herself with, and what He has done in her life when she does it His way. Pray over them. Let them hear you go to God on their behalf and to hear their name, and what your hopes, your wishes, and your dreams and your fears are for them. When you rise up, first thing in the morning, identify them and give them courage. Why? Because the world, school, their jobs, the media, everybody else has them 160-something hours a week more than you do, more than I do. And if we don't speak into it, culture will. They're not going to stop. Let them know they belong to Jesus. How? By seeing it in your life. Tell the truth when you're out there today. You're going to be called to lie, cheat, and steal, but tell the truth. Love people, even the people that drive you nuts. Why? Because you drive God nuts, and He still loves you. Do what is right. Do not be afraid. Why? Because the Lord goes with you. And remember who you are and whose you are. Set the stage for the day. But that takes time. It takes commitment. It takes effort. It's hard. They don't want it. They're going to complain about it. They're going to love it. They're not going to know what to do. But you still got to try. Tie on them as symbols on your hands, the things you do. When your hands are working, you're seeing. Bind them on your foreheads. You're thinking about it. To the door frames of your houses. It's where you live. On your gates. When you're going home and going out, you can't help. You're guarding your heart. You're guarding your life. You're guarding your actions. You're guarding your thoughts with God. When the Lord your God brings you into the land, when He does it, He swore to your forefathers, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, to give you a land with large, flourishing cities you did not build. Houses filled with all kinds of good things you did not provide. Wells you did not dig, and vineyards and olive groves you did not plant. Then when you eat and are satisfied, be careful that you do not forget the Lord who brought you out of Egypt, out of the land of slavery. The churches of Revelation, the Christian men and women of Revelation that we've read about, and us today. We're that generation that didn't have to go in and fight Canaan. These are the kids who were still in mama's belly, who weren't yet born, or they were being carried by their grandpa across the river. And then the battles take place. The victories are won. They didn't know about the hard life of the depression. They didn't know about the slavery. They didn't know about eating manna every day and God providing. So somewhere along the way, we quit telling the stories. And when that happens, we have kids who have no allegiance because there's no story to be no God to be allied to. Just some name we hear on weekends. God is saying, don't forget. Fear, respect the Lord your God. Serve him only. Is that not what he tells the brothers and sisters in Revelation 2 and 3? Your allegiance can't be divided. It's either to God or to Caesar. It's either to God or the cultures of the world. It's either to God or to yourself. It can't be both. That's why Paul says, I've been crucified with Christ. Nevertheless I live, yet not I, but Christ living in me. Meaning my allegiance is to whatever he calls me to do and be. All that I counted as good, all that I counted as valuable, all I counted as important means nothing compared to the surpassing knowledge of knowing Christ Jesus and him crucified. Is that not what he's telling the churches of Revelation? Is that not what he's telling Israel as they cross into the land of Canaan? For the Lord your God who is among you, God has always been amongst his people, even before Jesus came, is a jealous God, and his anger will burn against you, and he will destroy you from the face of the land. Somewhere along the way, American Christianity, not all, please hear me, not all, because I see it in y'all, loving the Lord, but somewhere along the way, we think it's okay to do things our way and not God's way, and it's going to be okay. Anybody who tells you it is lying to your face. See, God's that parent. He's that father. He's that mother who tells the child don't do this, it's going to hurt, and it's going to have consequences. He's the one telling the employee, if you do this, you're going to get fired. Sorry, it's going to happen. But if you do things this way, you can succeed, and you'll be blessed, and you'll have more than you could ever ask, dream, or imagine. God is not asking mom and dad to be the friend. He's asking you to be the parent. He's asking you to be the representative of him. But you can't be the representative of him until you and I submit to him. Otherwise, we're just representative of the culture we already live in. And he will destroy you from the face of the land. Now you got to understand, the rapture and all that language we talk about deals with destruction and being kept safe. And this same language has been going on since the beginning. We're going to dig deeper into it in the weeks to come, but it's way too much to do all in one lesson. Do not put the Lord your God to the test as you did at Massa. By show of hands, moms and dads, grandmas, bosses, whatever. Have you ever said, don't you do it? Don't you do it? And you're watching them that you know they're going to do it, right? When they do it, what do you do? Oh, it's funny. What do you do? You might laugh when they're not looking, like we are right now. My grandson Rowan's getting a whole lot of that. Don't you do it, don't you do it, don't you do it. Little Dennis the Menace is going crazy around the house. Just like we all did. But he has to learn. And God tried to show us the penalty when the Son died on the cross. So make no mistake about it, to reject his authority is to set ourselves up and our children up for defeat. But when we line up with him, be sure to keep the commands of the Lord your God and the stipulations, decrees he has given you. Do what is right and good in the Lord's sight. Not what we think is good, not what culture says is good, not what the world says is okay to do, but what does God say? So that it may go well with you and you may go in and take over the good land, the land promised on oath to your ancestors. You want to go to heaven? You want to spend eternity with God? Then do what he says, so that it may go well with you. But make no mistake, there is a day coming. And so we have to decide. Thrusting out all your enemies before you, as the Lord said. And I'm going to stop here because anybody that studies the book of Joshua will understand they didn't do it. They stopped. And they had to fight battles from now on. But God was still there, and God was still gracious, and God was still merciful, and God was still a God of wrath. In the future, when your son asks you, what is the meaning of the stipulation, decrees, and the laws our God has commanded you? Tell him we were slaves of Pharaoh. Tell him we were slaves to immorality, lying, cheating, stealing, gossip, anger, and rage. As a people and as individuals. And that's where a lot of parents, and we get stuck, right? We don't want to share. And sometimes because we don't want them to think it's okay, if you do what I did, you'll turn out all right. No. This is the lessons I learned the hard way. And because I love you, I'm going to tell you the truth. See, most of the time when I'm in other churches visiting around the country, whether it's once a month thing or it's an every week thing, what I hear is, the Lord commanded us to take this on the first day of the week to remember God and what he did for us, which is true. But it's so shallow. So why are we surprised we live in a world and in a culture that looks at Jesus and scoffs? But when we lean into it and we're honest and we're truthful and we share our struggles and our victories, now God has brought us through. I was a slave. And I struggled with it then, and it keeps coming back, and I have to fight. I have to take my thoughts captive. Like the Apostle Paul, the things I don't want to do, I do. The things I shouldn't do, and all that. Be honest with them. Why? Because that's where they're going to be, and that's where they are. 3rd and 4th grade kids are having sex now, in case y'all didn't know. They're doing drugs now, in case you didn't know. They're looking at pornography, in case you didn't know. They're lying to their parents. Imagine that. Teenage girls are getting pregnant. Teenage boys are becoming biological fathers. Families are falling apart. Why? Because we're slaves. Before our eyes, the Lord sent signs and wonders great and terrible on Egypt and Pharaoh and his whole household. But he brought us out. Don't miss this. This is a pivotal verse in Deuteronomy that connects back to Matthew, which connects to John, which connects to Luke, which connects to Revelation and throughout Scripture. But he brought us out from there to bring us in and give us the land he promised on oath to our ancestors. God takes us and he places us. But not the way you think, maybe. And I'm excited to tell you that in the next couple of weeks. It's been fun. The Lord commanded us to obey all these decrees and to fear the Lord our God. Why? So that we might always prosper. Like the psalmist said, like a tree planted by the water producing fruit in season. And be kept alive, as is the case today. And we are careful to obey all this law before the Lord our God as he has commanded us. That will be our righteousness. Are we under the law like the Jews were? No. We're Gentiles. And Jesus fulfilled it. But in Revelation 2 and 3, you have a church you have men and women in the ecclesia who are living in a culture that is anti-God. They encourage you to put God farther down and to compromise so that you can fit in, so that you can belong, so that you can make more money, so that you don't have to, you can do what you want to do. One of many gods, as said during communion this morning. No, he's the God. And he's telling the people in Revelation, like Paul in Romans 1, I am not ashamed of the gospel of Jesus Christ. For it is the power of salvation for the Jew and for the Gentile and for all who will believe. One God, one allegiance, not Caesar, not Trump, not Biden, not Obama, not the parish president, not the mayor, not a Republican Party or a Democrat Party, not an ethnicity, but my allegiance is to God Most High. He's telling his people, I know it's hard. I know you feel like you're spitting in the wind. But I'm with you. You've not denied my name. No matter how hard it gets, you're standing firm. And you may feel weak, and you may feel insignificant, and you may feel like, I'm trying to teach my children, but the world just is more of them. There is more of them. But God is greater in me than the one that's in the world. But they only see that if we live that. So God is inviting you and me, and he gives us a playbook that we're going to start opening up on how to live this out. How to regain our families, to take the land back that God has given us. To stand strong and to stand faithful. Because our God is able. He is worthy. We got a song we're going to sing. If during that song you'd like to have someone pray over you, by all means, we'd encourage you to do that. Ray will be in the back right corner. Actually, Connor will be in the back, your left, and Ray will be in the back, my left, for prayer. If you would, let's stand and sing.